Karen stood screaming in first class, voice echoing through the cabin. "This child can't sit here. This is my seat. Remove her right now." The flight attendant stayed calm and firm. Her tone was icy but controlled. "She has a valid ticket. Your seat is in the back. Please go there." That was it. Karen's temper exploded. She suddenly pulled out a gun. Passengers gasped. Crew stumbled back, panic flooding the aisles. The shot rang out. My wife screamed as she threw herself over our daughter, the bullet grazing her arm. Blood spreading fast. Chaos erupted. People cried, ducked, and shouted for help. But Karen had no idea who she had just provoked. The little girl she threatened was the daughter of a Navy SEAL. Before you hear how it all happened, comment below where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe for more real HOA stories that show what happens when power goes too far. The airport felt like a whole world by itself that day. Voices everywhere, suitcase wheels rolling, flight announcements echoing, and people rushing like they were all late for something important. But we weren't rushing. We were tired new parents, walking slowly, carefully, because in my wife's arms was our whole world wrapped in a tiny blanket. Our 3-month-old daughter slept peacefully against her chest, one small hand peeking out, curled like she was holding on to the universe. We waited in line for boarding, my hand gently supporting my wife's back, her eyes tired but shining with that soft glow only new mothers have. People looked at us and smiled, soft, warm smiles, the kind strangers give when they see a baby. A few whispered awe, and one older lady even touched her heart and whispered, "Beautiful angel." My wife smiled shyly. I squeezed her shoulder. Moments like that reminded us the world still had kindness in it. Our boarding group was called First Class. A rare treat. A gift to ourselves after long nights and endless bottles. After months of barely sleeping and living in a fog of diapers, rocking chairs, and lullabies. We earned this quiet moment. We needed this rest. We stepped into the plane, greeted by the calm, polite voices of flight attendants. The soft lighting inside felt like a blanket after a long day, and the seats looked like heaven compared to the hard plastic chairs in the waiting area. My wife settled carefully into her seat, adjusting the baby in her arms, tucking the little blanket around her like she was protecting a precious jewel. Our daughter blinked once, yawned, then drifted right back into her tiny dreams. Peace. Finally. I placed our bags above us, sat down next to my wife, and breathed out slowly, letting the exhaustion fall off my shoulders. This flight was supposed to be peaceful, a small break from the world, a quiet sky before going back to life's noise. I looked at my baby and smiled. Nothing in the universe could ruin this moment, I thought. Then came the sound that signaled trouble before I even turned my head. Heels, sharp and fast, slapping against the airplane floor like someone marching into a war they invented. Then perfume, heavy and trying too hard. Then a voice, high and irritated, already complaining before sitting down. There she was, Karen. Blonde hair cut sharp like she used it to slice arguments. Red jacket that screamed, "I demand attention." Lips pressed so tight they looked painful. She wasn't even seated yet, and she was already scanning the cabin with an expression like she owned the airline, the sky, and probably the clouds too. Her eyes landed on us, on my wife holding our baby. Her face twisted instantly. It wasn't surprise. It was offense, like our baby committed a crime simply by existing in her sight. She didn't whisper. She didn't hold back. She wanted everyone to hear her disgust. "A baby? In first class? You've got to be kidding me." Voices around us stopped for a second. Someone clicked their seatbelt slower. One man with glasses looked up and raised a brow. A woman across the aisle frowned, shaking her head. People recognized the energy immediately. Everyone had seen someone like her before, the kind who believes rules don't apply to them, patience is beneath them, and kindness is weakness. My wife froze for a moment, her hands tightening around our daughter, not in fear, just shock. She kept her eyes down, rocking our baby gently, trying not to draw more attention. She always chooses peace first. That's who she is. Karen scoffed loudly as if the silence wasn't enough punishment. Great, just great, crying and noise. This is ridiculous. She waved her hand at the seat beside us like it was contaminated. Some of us paid for quiet. No one answered. Not yet. People only exchanged glances, some tired, some annoyed, some obviously waiting for her to sit down and shut up. But Karen wasn't the type to sit quietly. She stood there, breathing loudly, as if she was waiting for applause for speaking her mind. None came. I kept my face calm, no reaction. I had learned long ago that not every battle needs a noise. Sometimes silence is the strongest answer. My wife leaned into me slightly, our baby still snuggled between us, soft and warm and untouched by the ugliness people carry. Karen eventually sat in first class, but her energy sat with claws out. You could feel it. Some people make noise with their mouth, others with their presence. Karen did both. I didn't speak to her. I didn't glare. I didn't move. But inside, a quiet promise formed. A line, a limit, a truth. There are many things I can ignore. There are many storms I can watch from calm distance. But my wife and my child are not storms you get to touch. Karen didn't know who was sitting 3 feet away from her. She didn't know what kind of man stayed silent and what made him stand. She had no idea the sky she sat in belonged to more than tickets and attitude. She didn't know she had just stepped into a story she wouldn't control. Not today, not on this flight, not with my family here. And she definitely didn't know I was a Navy SEAL. The flight attendants were still welcoming passengers when Karen pressed her call button with so much force the whole seat shook. She didn't tap it. She stabbed it, like she was hitting an emergency alarm because the seat beside her wasn't made of gold. The light above her turned on and a soft chime sounded. A flight attendant hurried over with a polite smile, the kind trained to survive difficult passengers. Karen didn't wait. She pointed straight at our baby like pointing at something dirty on the floor. "Remove that child," she ordered. "I am not flying next to a screaming creature." Her voice wasn't loud. It was sharp, sharp enough to cut through the quiet like a knife. People nearby heard. Heads turned again. The flight attendant blinked, surprised but still professional. "Ma'am, the baby is calm," she said gently. "And the family has first-class tickets." Karen laughed, not a real laugh, a dry, fake one full of insult. "Calm? For now," she snapped. "It's a baby. Babies scream. I paid for quiet." The attendant stayed patient. "Ma'am, all passengers with tickets are allowed to sit here." Karen's eyebrows shot up like she had been slapped. "Do you know who I am?" she demanded. I almost laughed inside. That sentence always belongs to a person who thinks the world owes them a red carpet. The attendant stayed calm. "I'm sure you are a valued passenger, but they belong here too." Karen looked like her soul left her body and came back twice. She turned toward my wife again like she was ready to fight. "You should sit in the back with the noise and crying. This cabin is for people who need peace." My wife didn't speak, just hugged our daughter closer, rocking gently. My baby blinked, calm and innocent, unaware she had just been declared a crime by a stranger. A man across the aisle muttered, "Lady, chill. It's a newborn, not a thunderstorm." Another whispered, "She hasn't even cried." Someone else quietly said, "Karen alert." Karen heard the whispers. Her face twisted. She hated not being supported. Entitled people always expect applause. "Excuse me?" she snapped at the passengers. "I paid for comfort. I deserve comfort." "You deserve earplugs," someone murmured. Karen gasped again like she had discovered betrayal in the air. She pressed the call button again, and again, and again. 3 frantic stabs. Ding, ding, ding. Like she was calling backup in a war that wasn't happening. Another flight attendant arrived quickly, looking confused. "Ma'am, how can we help you?" Karen practically shouted, "Remove them! I don't want a baby here!" The attendants exchanged looks. One leaned slightly toward Karen's seat and whispered, trying to avoid making a scene. "Ma'am, if you continue to disturb the cabin, we will have to ask you to calm down." "Disturb? Me?" Karen said, hand on her chest, dramatic as a soap opera villain. "I am trying to protect this cabin from a noise bomb." That was it. A woman 2 seats down stood up a little, leaned forward and said, "Ma'am, please stop. The baby is sleeping. You are the only noise here." A few people nodded. Someone quietly clapped once. Not loud, just enough to say, "We see you." Karen turned red. Really red. The kind of red that looks like frustration and ego boiling together. Her jaw clenched so hard her teeth almost cracked. She crossed her arms and sat back sharply, like she was punishing the seat for betraying her. She glared at us like she was waiting for the baby to cry just so she could feel right. Waiting to explode again. Waiting to prove she was in control. My wife whispered softly to our daughter, kissing her forehead. "It's okay, sweet girl. You're okay." The baby sighed and snuggled deeper. so peaceful, so tiny, so undeserving of hate. Inside me something shifted. Quiet, heavy, protective. People think danger starts when someone raises a voice. No. True danger starts when someone tries to threaten your family. Even with words. Even with looks. A father feels that storm form inside. Slowly. Deep. Karen didn't know anything about me. She didn't know my training. She didn't know what I had survived. She didn't know the quiet strength sitting beside her wasn't weakness. It was discipline. She only saw a tired dad with a cute baby. She didn't know I had spent my life protecting people in far worse places than a first-class cabin. She didn't know there are two types of peace in the world. The peace that comes naturally, and the peace someone like me steps in to protect. She thought she had power because she could complain louder than everyone else. She didn't know real power rarely speaks first. The lights inside the cabin dimmed a bit as boarding finished. Announcements started. Seatbelts clicked. Engines hummed. The plane was ready to fly. Karen wasn't. She sat stiff, arms crossed, jaw clenched like she had swallowed anger and couldn't spit it out. She kept staring at us, waiting, hoping for one tiny cry, one small sound, one excuse to explode again. She didn't know the only thing rising here wasn't a baby's cry. It was the line she was slowly crossing, and the person she was crossing it with wasn't just a tired father. She had no idea who she was challenging, no idea what kind of storm sits quietly until it has a reason to rise. The sky outside the window grew brighter as the plane prepared for takeoff. The storm inside this cabin was only beginning. The plane lifted into the sky, engines humming steady, lights dim and calm. People settled into silence, screens glowing, seatbelts snug, drinks being poured. My wife held our daughter close, gently rocking her like the world was soft and safe. For a few minutes, everything felt normal again. Flight attendants whispered, passengers breathed slow, and clouds drifted past the windows like cotton. Then it happened. My daughter made one tiny noise. Not a cry, not a scream. Just a little sound like she was stretching her tiny body and reminding herself she existed. A soft baby sigh, and that one quiet sound lit a fire in the wrong person. Karen turned fast, like she'd been waiting. Like every second she sat in her seat she was counting down to explode. Her eyes narrowed, eyebrows pulled together, frustration boiling over her face. "That's it," she hissed. People nearby stiffened. You could feel the air shift again, like a calm lake rippling before a storm hits. Karen's breathing changed, short, sharp, angry. She reached into her bag quickly, too quickly. Someone 3 rows back whispered, "Oh no." A woman across the aisle covered her mouth. A man threw his arm in front of his wife. Instinct took over the cabin instantly, like everyone could sense danger before they even saw it. Karen pulled something out, shiny metal. The moment it glinted under the cabin light, hearts jumped, breath froze. You could hear someone gasp. Someone else swore under their breath. One passenger hit the flight attendant button fast, tapping it over and over with shaking hands. The world inside the plane suddenly felt too small, tight, locked in, suspended above clouds with fear floating in the air like smoke. My wife didn't think. She moved. She hugged our baby tight, bending forward, wrapping her whole body around our daughter like instinct had taken control faster than thought ever could. Her arms formed a wall, her head lowered. She whispered, "Mommy's here. You're safe." Voice shaking but steady enough to comfort a child who didn't even know danger existed yet. I wasn't moving fast or slow. I was still, focused, every muscle ready, every breath controlled. Years of training sliding into place quietly like a switch turning on. Not loud, not dramatic, just ready. Karen's hand gripped the object, fingers stiff and emotional, like she believed her anger gave her rights over everyone around her. Her voice came out jagged and breathless. "If this baby makes noise, then someone needs to make them leave. I want them off this flight." Her words cut like she was slicing the quiet air in half. People ducked slightly, not fully, but enough to show fear had entered the cabin. Someone whispered, "She's lost it." Someone else whispered a prayer. The flight attendant rushed over, eyes wide, voice shaking but trying to sound firm. Ma'am, please lower your hand. Put that away right now." The attendant wasn't shouting, she was pleading, trying to keep the world from breaking inside that airplane. Karen didn't listen. Anger deafened her. Ego blinded her. She held the shiny object like she believed it gave her the right to rewrite rules of safety, kindness, life itself. My daughter squirmed, sensing tension, making one small whimper. My wife held tighter, gentle but fierce. "It's okay, baby. It's okay. Mommy's here." Karen's breathing grew faster, like she truly believed a crying baby was a threat to her comfort, to her silent kingdom in the clouds. "Make her stop," Karen shouted, voice cracking, face red with rage. "I won't sit here and listen to that." Her hand trembled slightly, not with fear, with anger, the worst kind, the kind that grows when no one stops it soon enough. A passenger whispered, "She's lost control." Another, "Is anyone going to do something?" Someone else, "Where's security?" But security isn't always the person in the uniform. Sometimes it's the calmest person in the room. I placed my hand gently on my wife's back. Just a touch. Silent message. "I'm here. I'm not leaving. I see everything." My baby breathed softly under my wife's chin, safe in her mother's shield, unaware of the storm around her. Innocence has no idea about the madness adults carry. Karen's eyes darted around, desperate for support, expecting backup from strangers who only stared in shock. She didn't find any allies, only disbelief, fear, and frustration staring back at her. A man finally spoke from behind her, quiet but firm. "Put that away, now." Another passenger added, "This is not okay, sit down." Karen's face twisted. She wasn't used to being the villain. She wasn't used to being told no. She wasn't used to the world pushing back. She raised her chin, teeth clenched. "This baby does not belong in first class. I demand peace." Peace, a word she demanded while she held chaos in her hand. The flight attendant raised her hand slowly like calming a wild animal. "Ma'am, please. Nobody is hurting you. The baby is not a threat. Put it away and sit down." Karen didn't lower her hand, and that was enough. That was the moment the line truly broke. Not when she complained, not when she yelled, but when she refused to see a child as a human being who deserved to breathe, to exist, to be held and loved without fear. My wife didn't look up. She kept whispering into our daughter's tiny ear, soft little words only babies understand. Love stronger than fear, heart bigger than danger, strength quieter than anger, but deeper. My jaw tightened slightly. My shoulders stayed relaxed. Calm, always calm. Because real strength does not panic. It observes. It waits. It chooses the moment. And in that pregnant pause, in that silent heartbeat between chaos and action, Karen still thought she had power. She didn't know what sat 3 feet away from her. She didn't know who breathed slow and steady in the seat she tried to intimidate. She didn't know she was seconds away from learning a lesson she would never forget. She thought a crying baby was a threat. She was about to understand what a real threat looks like. Time slowed. The cabin felt frozen in air, hanging between silence and fear. Karen's hand trembled harder now, not with regret, but with anger that had grown bigger than her sense. The shiny metal in her grip reflected the soft cabin lights, shaking like her pride was slipping away, but she refused to let go. People held their breath. No one dared blink. My wife held our daughter tighter, bending just slightly over her, instinct moving faster than thought, the kind only mothers understand. My baby made a tiny sigh against her chest, so quiet it could have been just a breath, yet it felt like thunder in that moment. My heart beat steady, not fast, not slow, steady. Because sometimes calm is louder than panic. Karen's voice cracked high and sharp. "I warned you. I won't listen to a baby scream this whole flight." Her hand jerked with the motion of someone believing anger gives permission to control the world. She pulled at the trigger fast, a snap born of frustration more than intention. A loud click, a spark, a misfire, a burst of sound like metal snapping instead of a bullet. The gun didn't shoot, but the sound was enough to make every passenger duck as if the sky had cracked open. A tray fell. Someone screamed. A baby 2 rows away cried. A man grabbed his wife protectively. Someone shouted, "Down!" For a moment, it didn't matter if the weapon fired or not. Fear moved through the cabin like electrical shock. My wife wrapped her arms around our daughter even tighter, curling her body into a shield, whispering desperate comfort, "Shh, Mommy's here, Mommy's here," even though she herself trembled. Fear makes hands shake, but love makes arms strong. Karen stared at the weapon like she was just as shocked. Her face changed, not remorse, but disbelief that she wasn't obeyed by the universe. "It should have worked," she shouted. "I told you, she needs to move." Her voice broke. Not from sadness, from ego collapsing. The world refused to bend for her. That was the wound she couldn't bear. Passengers looked up slowly, eyes wide, breaths shaky. But something had changed. The fear that once filled the air was shifting into something else. Anger, disgust, unity. People weren't afraid of the baby anymore. They were afraid of her. Someone whispered angrily she could have killed someone. Someone else hissed, "Take that away from her." Another voice, firm and quiet, said, "Stay down." The flight attendant rushed in, voice trembling. "Ma'am, drop that now. Put it on the floor." Her hands shook, but her words did not break. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's action through fear. Karen took a step back, weapon still in hand, breathing like she had run up a mountain. Her eyes darted around, searching for support, but no one was on her side anymore. She had demanded attention. Now she drowned in it. The attention that comes when someone becomes a danger. My wife clung to our baby like she was the last soft thing left in the world. Our daughter whimpered once, confused, not scared, too young to know. My wife's shoulders trembled as she held in tears, her breath shaky but her arms unbroken. A mother's fear is fire. It burns, but it protects. The cabin air tasted like metal and panic, thick and heavy. My breath fell into rhythm again, trained, steady, silent. Silence can be louder than screams. It can fill a room like a storm about to break. Karen shouted again, voice cracking like thin glass. "I just want peace. I paid for peace." The word sounded pathetic now, weak, small. Peace? She didn't even understand the meaning. She had turned peace into a weapon. No one answered. No one sided with her. For the first time, she looked alone, truly alone. Entitlement melts fast when it meets consequence. I stood slowly, like the sky pulling itself upward. Not because I was forced, not out of panic, but because it was time. There is a moment when stillness ends, not with rage, but purpose. I moved with the quiet weight of someone who knows exactly what they are capable of and exactly when to act. My wife felt my hand touch her shoulder, and she looked up just enough to see me standing. Her eyes filled with relief, fear, trust, all at once. She didn't need to say anything. She knew. She knew who I was long before this flight, and she knew now that I was no longer just a husband or father in this moment. I was something else. Something trained to end threats without shouting. Karen noticed me stand. Her face froze. She had looked powerful before. Now she looked like someone who finally saw the shadow she woke up. "Sit down," she snapped, but the command sounded brittle. It broke before it reached me. I didn't answer her. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I simply took one step forward. She flinched. Actually flinched. The weapon lowered slightly as her certainty cracked like thin ice under a heavy boot. My voice came out low, steady, controlled. "You pointed a weapon in a plane. You threatened a child." My eyes didn't blink. My voice didn't shake. Calm can be terrifying. Karen stared at me, confusion mixed with fear. Who are you?" And in that moment, everyone leaned in to hear the answer. Not loud, not dramatic, but heavy enough to shift the air. I didn't lift my shirt yet. Didn't show my tags. Didn't announce my title. I simply breathed slow, the way only a certain kind of man breathes when the moment arrives. Not a man who fights for ego. A man who fights for family. A man who fights because he knows how to end chaos. Karen held her breath, waiting. The cabin waited. The sky outside waited. She didn't know yet, but she was about to learn. She hadn't threatened just a baby. She had threatened the child of a Navy SEAL, and some lines cannot be crossed without consequence. Silence dropped inside the plane like someone turned off the world. Engines hummed outside, steady and calm, but inside the cabin everything felt still and tight, like the air stopped moving. Karen stood frozen, her arm tense, fingers gripping the useless weapon, as if letting go meant losing the last piece of herself. She didn't speak. She didn't blink. Her anger was still there, but it was changing. No longer fire, now something wet and shaking, like the beginning of fear. I didn't rush. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. I stepped forward slowly, every movement quiet and controlled. Years of discipline settled on my shoulders like armor. My voice came out calm as the ocean before a storm. "You pointed a weapon near my child." Karen's lips parted slightly, eyes wide now, not with anger but confusion, disbelief, then fear. A flicker. Like she finally realized there were lines in the world she didn't get to cross. She had pushed past comfort and arrogance and found something else, a wall that didn't move for her. I pulled the edge of my shirt up just enough for her to see metal catching the light. Dog tags, stamped steel, heavy with history. Training scars hidden under fabric. She stared at the tag like it was a snake waking up in her path. She swallowed hard, her throat clicking. Her voice came out thin. "You're military?" It didn't sound like a question. It sounded like she already knew the answer and hated it. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her, letting silence do the talking. When I finally spoke, the words were simple enough for anyone to understand. "I am a Navy SEAL." Whispers rippled through the cabin. Someone gasped softly. A man muttered, "Oh God," not in fear of me but in realization of the scale Karen had just misjudged. Another passenger whispered, "She messed with the wrong one." Even the flight attendant's shoulders loosened just a bit, relief flickering across her face. Karen's eyes darted around. She wasn't in control anymore. She wasn't the leader here. The moment she saw my tags, her false power evaporated like water on hot concrete. Her jaw trembled. Her fingers slowly loosened around the weapon, unwilling at first, then defeated. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move toward her quickly. I simply held her gaze, steady and cold. Not wild, not angry. That kind of emotion is loud. Mine wasn't. Mine was the type that scares people because it's quiet. I didn't need to sound dangerous. She already knew. "You pointed that at a family, at a mother holding a child. A crying baby is not a threat. But now you created one." Karen's knees softened slightly, like her body didn't know whether to sit or fall. She shook her head fast, like maybe she could undo the world she created. I didn't know, I thought." The words stumbled and broke apart. "That is the problem. You thought the world belonged to you." Passengers stared, eyes wide, breath held. They had watched a bully fall without a fist, without a shout, only truth and calm authority. It stunned them more than yelling would. The flight attendant moved in carefully, voice soft but commanding. "Ma'am, give me the weapon." Her hands shook a little, but she stood tall. Karen's hand opened finally, and the flight attendant took the gun, stepping back fast, cradling it like something toxic. Karen stared at her empty hand like she wanted to deny everything, like she was a victim now, not the cause. She whispered, trembling, "I didn't mean to, it wasn't supposed to, I just wanted..." But her words died in her mouth. People around her didn't show sympathy. They looked tired, annoyed, disgusted. A man across the aisle muttered, "This is why you mind your business." Someone else whispered, "She could have hurt them." Another, quiet but firm, said, "She deserves whatever's coming." Karen backed into her seat slowly, chest heaving, eyes darting around like she still expected someone to defend her, to say she didn't do anything wrong. No one did. Her entitlement finally hit the wall of consequences. My wife lifted her head slowly, still cradling our daughter like she was holding the most precious thing on earth, which she was. Her eyes met mine, shining with relief and love, but also exhaustion. Fear takes energy, courage takes more. She breathed out slow, shoulders dropping a little now that she knew the storm was shifting away from her and our baby. I touched her arm gently, checking her without needing to say anything. She nodded once, small but strong. Our daughter cooed softly against her chest, unaware she had just survived a moment she shouldn't even have been close to. A passenger whispered, "Thank you," voice shaking with emotion. Another said, "Sir, you saved us." I didn't respond. I didn't need thanks. I didn't do it for them. I did it because a father protects. Because some lines are sacred. The captain's voice came through the speaker, calm but firm. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We will be landing soon. Law enforcement will meet us upon arrival." Karen's breathing turned fast again. She shook her head. No, I didn't mean, I wasn't going to, I was just upset." She looked around, desperate. "Someone defend me, someone tell them." Silence answered her. Entitlement always expects a crowd. Reality gives none, she whispered now, broken and shrinking. I didn't know who you were. That's the thing. You never know who people are. So you treat them right. Always. Power doesn't come from noise. Power sits quietly, watching, until it's needed. Karen finally stopped talking, back pressed into her seat, eyes wide and lost. The cabin remained quiet, not scared now, but relieved, protective, united. A community formed not around fear, but around understanding who truly protected them that flight. I rested my hand over my child's back, feeling her tiny breaths. My wife leaned her head on my shoulder. The world outside was clouds and sky, soft and endless. Inside, peace returned, not because someone demanded it, but because someone defended it. Karen stared at the floor, shaking. She had tried to force the world to bend for her comfort. Instead, she learned something different. Some comfort is earned. Some respect comes from strength. And real power is never loud. The plane began its descent, wheels lowering with a heavy hum, cabin lights brightening softly like dawn breaking over a quiet town. People shifted in their seats, not with normal travel movement, but with tension slowly draining from their muscles, like they had been holding their breath for hours and finally remembered how to breathe again. The danger had passed, but the memory of fear hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Karen sat stiff and pale, hands shaking, fingers twisting nervously in her lap. No more yelling, no more demands, no more my rights speeches. Silence had swallowed her whole. She had gone from queen of the aisle to a trembling figure staring at the floor, face drained of color. Knowing each second in that seat pulled her closer to consequences she never imagined would apply to her. My wife leaned against me, exhausted but safe, our baby sleeping again in her arms, tiny fingers curled around her shirt like holding on to a piece of safety in a world that had just shown a dark corner too soon. I brushed my hand gently across my wife's arm, the place where the bullet had skimmed her earlier. Just a graze, not deep, but enough to sting, enough to remind us how close chaos came. She was strong. She kept her head bowed, whispering soft lullabies to our daughter, voice trembling but steady enough to give comfort. Passengers looked at us with quiet admiration, not loud clapping or dramatic praise, just soft glances, nods, gratitude in their eyes. Real respect doesn't shout. It sits in silence, heavy and sincere. The plane touched the runway with a slow, controlled rumble, tires gripping ground softly but surely. The cabin exhaled. Seatbelt lights flicked on. The pilot's voice came through speakers, calm, steady, but with a layer of seriousness. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. Authorities will be boarding shortly. No panic. Just relief that help was ready and waiting. Karen jerked upright in her seat like the announcement snapped her back into reality. Her eyes widened, fear climbing up her spine. She whispered frantically, desperate now, "I didn't hurt anyone. It wasn't loaded, it misfired. I was just upset. I shouldn't be arrested. It was a mistake. I didn't know. I didn't." Her words fell apart, scattered pieces of panic. No one spoke to her. No one comforted her. When you threaten innocence, sympathy leaves the room first. The plane door opened with a soft mechanical sigh. Uniformed officers entered, quiet but firm, stepping into the aisle with purpose, not haste. They weren't confused. They weren't unsure. They knew exactly who they came for. Karen shrank into her seat as if she could melt into the cushion and disappear from the world. Her voice shook as she tried one last time to save herself. "It was just a moment. They provoked me. I was just scared of noise. I didn't know." The officer closest to her didn't yell. He didn't argue. He simply said, "Ma'am, stand up." Karen didn't move. Frozen. Fear and disbelief tangled together. She had lived her life believing rules were for others, not for her. But the world had finally told her no. When she didn't stand, the officers gently but firmly lifted her to her feet. They secured her wrists with cuffs, not rough, not cruel, just procedure. Justice doesn't scream, it arrives calm. Tears ran down Karen's cheeks, streaks cutting through her pride. "Please, I didn't know. I wasn't going to shoot. I just wanted quiet. Babies don't belong." A passenger across the aisle cut her off, voice sharp but controlled. "Babies belong. You don't—" The cabin didn't cheer. It didn't need to. Truth sat heavy enough without applause. Karen's eyes darted to me. "Please, say something. Tell them I didn't mean. I didn't know you were—" I finally spoke, voice low and steady. "You didn't need to know who I am." You just needed to be a decent human being. Her face collapsed like her world folded in half. She whispered something that sounded like sorry, but it didn't matter. Sorry after a threat doesn't erase fear. Sorry after danger doesn't undo danger. Sorry isn't a shield. Officers guided her off the plane. Her footsteps were small now, nothing like the loud, demanding steps she entered with. She disappeared down the aisle, and the plane door closed behind her like closing a chapter. Silence followed for a moment. Then a passenger breathed out, long and shaky. Someone whispered, "Thank God." Another murmured, "That could have been so much worse." A woman dabbed tears from her eyes. A father across the aisle held his child closer. Fear had touched every heart in that cabin, but so had relief. The flight attendant came to us slowly, eyes warm with sympathy, voice soft. "Are you both okay? Do you need medical assistance?" My wife nodded weakly. "Just a small cut, just shaken." The attendant looked at me with respect deeper than words. "Thank you, truly." I shook my head gently. I did what any father would do. Not every father can react like I did. I knew that, the plane knew that, but I didn't say it. True strength doesn't wear medals in conversation. We stood, gathering our things. I carried the bags. My wife held our daughter tight, still whispering soft, soothing words. Mother's protection never turns off, even after danger passes. As we walked down the aisle, passengers gave us small nods, soft eyes, quiet gratitude. One man whispered, "Your daughter's lucky." Another murmured, "Respect." Outside the plane, cool airport air filled my lungs, clearing the tension from my body. My wife leaned into me, tired but safe. Our daughter slept peacefully, unaware of how close the world came to showing its darkest face. But she didn't see it. She only felt warmth, love, protection, and that's how it should be. We walked forward slowly, like stepping out of a storm into sunlight. I glanced back once, just enough to acknowledge the moment, not enough to stay in it. Karen was gone. Justice was handling her now. I didn't need revenge. Justice already walked her away. My wife whispered, voice soft, "I'm glad you were here." I pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "I'll always be here." A father protects. A husband defends. A Navy SEAL doesn't raise his voice. He raises the line no one crosses. Karen never knew who she challenged that day. Now she never will forget. And as we walked out into the bright terminal lights, holding our child between us, one truth settled in my chest with quiet pride and unshakable peace. My family flies safe. Always.